Hi, my name is Brooke. I'm calling from Milwaukee, and I'm calling with the question, what would we do if the leader of the free world is exhibiting mental health issues? So in reference to catching COVID-19 and going out during quarantine to wave at supporters and also to yank his mask off when he returns to the White House, to me means he doesn't get it. So to me, something's mentally wrong upstairs, and what are the laws to protect us if the leader of the free world, there's something psychologically or mentally wrong with him? What options do we have?
Good morning. My reason for voting for Joe Biden is because he will bring the blood pressure of America back to 120/80. Under this administration, it has been absolutely crazy each and every hour of the day. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he would be the calm after the storm.
Can you hear me now? Can Lisa hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Hi, I'm Rachel in Portland, Oregon, and once again, our president is all the news all the time, but so many other things are happening as well, and I wonder what impact all of this and the chaos right now and the spreading of the disease, what impact that will have on the Supreme Court nomination.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay,
Does
great.
framing look okay now, Jeremy? No. You either get that or that. Oh, all right. Yep.
Sure. Is that too much? Jeremy, how do you feel?
So ready.
Okay. Today's the day. I feel good. Let's do it. Let's get it done. My chair's as low as it'll go now. How's that?
Wow, we're starting on time.
I feel great, Jeremy.
It's Friday, October 9th, just 25 days from the election, and this is one show that will never make you sign an NDA. Today on Vote for America, we'll be doing our weekly roundup with the Lincoln Project's own Mike Madrid and Kurt Bardella. We'll also be talking with Brayden Harrington and his father, Owen. And now, our host, Lincoln Project co-founder, Jennifer Horn.
Welcome to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm laughing at myself because I thought that NDA line was kind of funny in the opening today. It tickled me. Welcome back to the show. We're so happy that you're joining us today here at Vote for America on LPTV, where we want to make sure that you have all the information that you need to make your voice heard in this election, because together we're going to defeat Donald Trump and make sure that we elect Joe Biden to lead our country for the next 4 years. So we're starting off today with some important voter registration information. We want to make sure, as we just said, that you've got all the information you need. So voter registration is closing in some states. You're running out of time to get registered to vote. If you live in Idaho, North Carolina, New York, or Oklahoma, today is the last day that you can register to vote, and you can do that online by going to vote.org. Let's make sure that you're registered. If you live in Washington, D.C., in Kansas, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, Oregon, Virginia, or West Virginia, next Tuesday, October 13th, is the last day that you can register to vote. And in Wisconsin, October 14th. In Nebraska, October 15th. Again, if you're not registered, you're not going to be able to vote, and we need your vote. So get out there and make sure that you get registered. We have a full and fun show up for you today. So let's start by bringing in my co-host. I'm always happy to welcome Lisa Senecal. So she is the founder of the Marin Group, and our resident, excuse me for that mess I just made in front of the camera, and our resident independent voter. Hey, Lisa, how are you today?
I'm great, Jennifer. Good to be here.
It's good to be here with you. I'm feeling good today, Lisa. I can't quite say why. I don't know what it is that's got me going, other than I'm really excited that we are in a position, you and I. So yeah, well, it is a little bit. It is getting chilly, but I think I'm excited that you and I are in a position here today where we can actually move the needle, start to move the ball down the field, and make sure that we defeat Donald Trump. We're going to start with some, somewhat discouraging. It seems like every day there is another person on Twitter who should be a voice for leadership, or at least a voice of decency, who is disappointing us and just contributing to the only word I can think is just the grossness of what's coming out of this administration. So let's go to our first tweet. Let's start with the tweet from Harlan Hill. Harlan is an advisor to the president, to the Trump campaign. He is frequently on the news. You guys have probably seen him on Fox News, maybe, if you watch Fox. And he tweeted yesterday that Kamala Harris, or the day before yesterday, I think he tweeted this, Kamala Harris comes off as such an insufferable, lying bitch. Sorry, it's just true. And this really killed me, Lisa, for a couple of reasons. One is, after he kind of got called out on it, the next day he doubled down. Yesterday he tweeted again and doubled down. But what really got to me was something that the same thing that kind of fueled some of what you and I were talking about yesterday. Why is it okay for a man who is supposedly a professional, a voice for a presidential campaign, somehow respected enough by somebody somewhere that he's part of the conversation on a news channel? Why is it okay for him to come out and call a woman who has accomplished more than most of us ever dream of accomplishing a bitch? Just because, why? Like, why is that okay? Why do we continue to accept that? And I don't mean me, we, you, and I, because
right.
I'll tell you, I certainly don't accept it.
Yeah.
Say it to me and see what happens. what is going on in our country that this is what's coming out from people in the circle of the President of the United States?
Yeah, well, the answer is it's not okay. And, I was trying to think of a word that summed up kind of how I'm feeling today. And the best I could come up with was revolted. I am just so revolted by the language that is coming out of these people, and at the root of it, I mean, Donald Trump did not create misogyny, but he has given permission for misogynists to, as he has with racism, he has given permission for the things that didn't used to be said out loud to now be said out loud and to be tweeted, and it is just an abomination that someone who sits behind the Resolute desk is encouraging this kind of stuff. It's outrageous.
It is, and it's just so demeaning, and the thing, and what really killed me in that tweet was when he said, sorry, it just is. Like, it's just the truth. It's just the way it is. She just is a bitch. I hate that. And because it is said, the word is not used with the intention of trying to enlighten or inform. He's not saying, gee, she seems like, like this particular thing made her angry, or she doesn't seem to be able to handle herself on this debate stage or something. He uses that word to demean and to diminish and to make less than. And it is not acceptable. Right. And I have to say right now, I feel like I identify this because it just seems so crazy. I am still a registered Republican. I'm a conservative more than I am a Republican. And I am pleading to my women friends in the Republican Party to speak up and fight back. And even if you agree with what someone is trying to say about, behind the comment, don't tolerate this. Do not tolerate this. As long as we keep saying, well, it's going to continue. It's not acceptable. And it's especially not acceptable from any person who is in any way associated with the President of the United States. It's beyond me. It's beyond me at this point. I don't even know how to respond anymore.
Well, when you talk about, I'm sorry, when you talk about people who are associated.
You and I both have sons, right, Lisa? You and I both have sons. What would you say if your son came into the house and said, boy, that Kamala Harris, she's such a bitch?
Part of what bothers me so much about that word is that it is a gendered word. We don't refer to men as bitches. And so when he calls her a bitch, he is doing it because he is taking a swipe at her gender. And you were just mentioning, the people around Donald Trump. And, I made a quick list this morning, and God knows I probably forgot some, but the people Donald Trump has hired and who are in his orbit and who he has defended, it is a misogynistic soup of sexual harassers, domestic abusers. There's even a credibly accused pedophile thrown in there. I mean, we've got Steve Bannon, Rob Porter, Roger Ailes, Jason Miller, Bill Shine, Corey Lewandowski, Brad Parscale, Andrew Padzer, Bill O'Reilly, David Sorensen, Roy Moore. And, now we've even got a woman to toss in there with Kimberly Guilfoyle, who apparently is sexually harassing people who work for her as well. And, when we talk about the Proud Boys and Donald's, stand back and stand by, we end up talking a lot about their anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, but at the core of the founder of that organization is a misogynist. That is the basis that this organization was created on, that women are intellectually inferior, that there is a place, a very small box, generally in the kitchen, barefoot is where we belong. And he encourages violence against women who, and we've seen this kind of stuff play out now in what we saw happening to Gretchen Whitmer yesterday. I mean, all of this stuff
Right.
has real world consequences for people.
Well, and let's not forget when we spoke to Elizabeth Newman earlier in this week on the show on Tuesday. What she said about the threat from what are essentially domestic terrorists, and in this particular case, she talked about the Proud Boys, and they are a domestic terrorist organization that is rooted in a very misogynistic view of the world. And let's update people in case they haven't heard the story. There were a couple of these right-wing militia types, I think 6 or 7, who were arrested in Michigan for actually putting together a detailed plan to kidnap and put on trial the female governor of the state of Michigan because they didn't like that, she was disagreeing with the president about the coronavirus, about masks, about trying to shut things down to stop the spread of the virus, all these other things. And to your point, Lisa, when the president of the United States gives permission, he makes it acceptable. He opens the door to these sort of people and this sort of thing. This is what unfolds. This is what we mean when we say that it's dangerous. These guys are thinking about kidnapping a sitting governor in a state. I mean, it sounds like something out of a military dictatorship. It's crazy, but worse than that,
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. It is. It's incredibly dangerous. We saw during the debate, it already started happening before the first debate even ended when the president did say stand back and stand by instead of denouncing the Proud Boys. They immediately took to social media, and they felt that they were being told, stand ready. And
exactly,
there are a lot of unstable folks who are members of these organizations, and giving them any little bit of license to think that their actions are appropriate and allowed and that they will be blessed by the President of the United States is unbelievably dangerous. And why Gavin McInnes, who's founded the Proud Boys, has not been deported from the United States. He is a Canadian citizen. He is a guest in our country, and why he is allowed to remain here as a leader of a domestic terrorist group, as George W. Bush would say, that's some weird shit.
I love that you're quoting George W. Bush, Lisa. I love that. But I'm sorry. I think that just kind of tickles me. These are, but it's like I'm laughing about your quote, but this is so serious. I have so many friends in the Republican Party who say, "Oh, people are overreacting. We have Second Amendment rights. People have a right to their own opinion. Don't be a snowflake." All these different things that I hear amongst my circle of fellow Republicans. This is the consequence of reckless, irresponsible, behavior, language, and acceptance of that. And before we move on, there's one more tweet that caught my attention that I wanted to share with you too, Lisa. You're usually the good one bringing in the best tweets for us, but these caught my attention. I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to talk about them. If you guys can put up Representative Greg Murphy's tweet for me, I would appreciate that. Representative Greg Murphy is a Republican member of Congress from North Carolina, and he tweeted, "Kamala Harris is a walking disaster. She was only picked for her color and her race. Is that how we pick our leaders now in America?" I'm just mortified. But now, apparently, Representative Murphy got enough pushback because he deleted his tweet after the fact. And
which is encouraging that they're.
Well, it's encouraging that there is someone on his staff who recognized that the pushback was something that needed to be responded to. The congressman wrote those words. He wrote out that she was chosen for her race and her color. Is that how we pick our leaders today? And I think as racist as that is, it's also sexist as far as I'm concerned, because I think it's another attempt by this guy who identifies probably as conservative without any real understanding of what conservative is supposed to mean, trying to diminish and demean and make less than a woman who is opposing the strong male that he thinks, the rest of us all should essentially bow down to.
Yeah, and fortunately, Joe Biden doesn't possess those insecurities that are so blatantly manifested in the current occupant of the White House. I mean, that part of these guys' problem with Kamala Harris is it's not just that they dislike her; they're intimidated by her. She is a bright, strong, capable, accomplished woman, and she scares the bejesus out of these guys because they know if they were put in the situation Mike Pence was, they would hope to be able to fare as well as he did, and he didn't do well. She would just dominate these guys, and it terrifies
I agree. I do think it's a question of, I don't want to say insecurity exactly, but I think they are intimidated by her. I agree. And I think that there are some people who are simply intimidated by by change, by something that, or someone that, is unexpected or different. But these guys putting out these comments, that is so beyond anything that's excusable at all. I don't care. I don't care if you're at home at night crying because you're so intimidated and so in fear of what you think Kamala Harris is going to bring, to the White House if they win. There is nothing that excuses this. It is racist. The first one was misogynistic, and they are not acceptable. And it is not enough, Lisa, for you and I to sit here and say that. Republican women have got to hold these men accountable. It is their hour and their responsibility. They have to, and I include myself in that, obviously. So let me see, Lisa. We've got a big show ahead of us today.
We're packed with good stuff.
We'll go behind the scenes. Jeremy, do we have time for the Mike Lee tweet? Let's jump to the Mike Lee. We do not, no, Jeremy says.
No, we don't. Move it along.
There has been enough talking. So we do not have time for the Mike Lee tweet today. So Lisa, I think that means I'm going to pass it over to you for a minute.
Yeah, I will dive in. So obviously Jennifer and I have a lot to say, but it's not just our voices who we want to feature on this program. We have really incredible guests today. We also want to make sure that we are featuring your voices. So anywhere that you are watching us, please give us comments. Let us know what you're thinking and feeling and what your questions are for us. You can tweet us at #AskVoteForAmerica. We have a phone number. If folks still leave voicemail messages, please go ahead and use the phone. We will listen to the voicemail messages. And you can send us an email at our Gmail account. And please keep the comments coming in. We will definitely be featuring some of those voicemails and tweets and Facebook comments in the show as we move forward. We also wanted to very quickly remind you that we are already in election season and folks are out there voting. We've already had more than 5 million people vote early and absentee, which is completely unheard of. We have never had an election like this before. So what we want you to do is tweet me pictures of you voting. So tweet me at LC Senecal, use the hashtag Vote for America. We want to be able to feature some of those photos. I am, lucky to be able to be dropping my ballot off today. I'm going to pop it in the mailbox, and I have confidence that our wonderful mail delivery woman is going to get that down to the folks to process it. So please. Send us some pictures of that. It would be really wonderful to know that we have our Lincoln voters out there who are making sure that their ballots are in and their voices are being heard.
That's great. Don't forget to vote. Like we said at the beginning, got to get registered to vote, and then you vote. We need one and then the next. That's how, it's the only way. And let's just remind everybody how important this is. It is the only way that we win on November 3rd, is that everyone get their votes in now. Vote early, vote once. Thank you very much for that, Lisa. So I'm really happy to have our next set of guests with us. These two gentlemen that we've really been looking forward to talking to for a while now. This past August at the Democratic Convention, 13-year-old Brayden Harrington from my beautiful state of New Hampshire spoke beautifully about his stutter and having to live with the stutter, and how meeting Joe Biden gave him confidence to deal with it. Before we bring them on, I just want to share this little video with you all.
We wanted to hear you speak. Oh man, come on. I tell you what, don't let it define you. You are smart as hell. Now you really are. You can do that. Can I get a phone number for you and I can tell you what I used to do and how I would do it? Can you take his phone? Because there's about 25 stutterers I continue to work with. And I can tell you the things that help me. I know, by the way, the hardest thing is talking on the telephone. So I don't expect you to be able to. But when I stuttered, I used to talk like this. And it took a lot of practice, but I promise you you can do it. I promise you. And don't let it define you. You're handsome, you're smart, you're a good guy. I really mean it. Don't let it define you. And you know, when I say I know about bullies, you know about bullies. The kids who make fun, it's going to change, honey. I promise you. Is it all right if I call him Dad? No, I mean for real. Is it okay?
That's terrific. Thank you so much. We're so happy to have with us today Owen and Brayden Harrington. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm just really happy and good to see you, Brayden. Good to see you too, Owen. I'm really appreciative that you both made time for us here today. So, Dad, how proud are you of your son right now?
Extremely, obviously, but I think it's interesting. I haven't seen that video in a little while. We watched it quite a bit when it initially came out, but I watched that now, and that's a different boy that I see in that video than I have next to me now. It's been an amazing journey for us.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. So, Brayden, have you been able to talk with Vice President Biden since that day? Has he given you a ring?
I called him about or he called me, about a month and a half ago, somewhere
a little while ago, yeah.
Yeah. So he called me, and my mom said no until I said that it was like some bot call, and she was like, "Answer it! Oh my God!" So I answered it, and it was Biden. So I talked to him for like a close to a half an hour, somewhere around there.
So, can you tell us a little bit of what he shared with you on the phone?
The timing wasn't too bad. He was about to go into his debate, so I don't know if
debate practice.
Yeah, debate practice.
Debate practice.
He called me and he said he just congratulated me on the. He congratulated me for the convention and thanked me for doing it. We talked a lot about just random things. I don't know.
That's pretty cool that the Vice President of the United States gave you a call no matter what you talked about. So, Owen, how's it been for you since all this happened? I imagine that with all of the praise and the congratulations that Brayden certainly has earned, that maybe has there been any sort of negative pushback from other people? How have things changed for you and Brayden since the convention?
So, interestingly enough, when the convention started, I tweeted real quick, check this out. This is Brayden. He's going to speak in the national convention. We couldn't be prouder, something like that. And there was one negative tweet immediately after, saying that here we go. This is going to be about stuttering. It's not going to be about dementia, which is obviously what Joe Biden has, blah, blah, blah. Immediately an outpouring of people going against that. And I was advised by a few people, shut off your Facebook, shut off your Twitter. And my response to myself, I mean, I didn't get into it with them, was absolutely not. I want to leave it on. And we received nothing after that. It's all been an outpouring of appreciation, kindness, love. It's just, this was a really good opportunity for America to look in the mirror and see what's actually important. And it's still going. I mean, you've reached out and asked us to speak with you. Brayden still is reaching out with others and has had the opportunity to meet various people who stutter and work with stuttering groups, but also just still has contact here and there with the Biden campaign. And I think it's just really good for us to see what's actually important in life as opposed to the sides of politics, which unfortunately has really taken over our whole landscape. So,
and I think that's a big part. I think that's a big part of why, Brayden's story has really kind of caught the heart of so many Americans as well. It's a nice reminder to us that there are decent people out there still, and that we could have, decency and leadership. So, Brayden, I know that you've talked about, it's not always easy being a kid out there amongst all those other kids. If you have a stutter or any other things that might make you a little bit different from everybody else, what would you say if you had a chance right now to talk to other children who maybe have faced a little bit of bullying or, that kind of situation? What would you tell them?
Well, first I would say that it doesn't define you. And to always have a growth mindset. Because once you got a growth mindset, you have a feeling that you just because you talk a certain way that other people don't talk, that most people don't talk that way, it doesn't mean you're different. You play the same you play the same sports, you play the same games, you do the same things as a normal person would do. And it's sometimes it's sad, but you always have to have a growth mindset, like I said, and you have to have like somebody who can help you with that. Someone who really like cares and can help you through that. I use my parents, or my parents help me. I don't use them, but they help me, and I haven't really had any bullying moments since 6th grade, and that one was just they didn't know what it was. So right now, now I'm fine with it, because it was a natural instinct. It was a natural instinct to make fun of somebody because they didn't know. So I'm fine with that, but there's a lot of bullies out there, and you always have to have a growth mindset about it.
Brayden, you are not a normal young man. I would say that you're really quite extraordinary. I'm just so impressed with your maturity and your compassion, and the kindness and the intelligence that you bring to what you're saying and the message that you're putting out there. So, Owen, here, give you how does it feel to know you and your son now are part of the Joe Biden campaign, encouraging just from having this instinctive human interaction with the vice president at a campaign event, that without even meaning to, you have highlighted his compassion and his kindness, and you've really become an influence over how people are going to vote about him. That's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there was no intention of anything other than Brayden sitting at the campaign event and hearing someone who stutters, and Brayden had elbowed me a bunch of times as we're watching it, oh, he just had a moment. And he and I were able to hear that and know that. I don't think others were able to pick up on that. So that's all I wanted, was for him to see someone who stuttered and who rose to a pretty high level in life and didn't let it get in the way by any means. But that doesn't really answer your question. Your question was, how do we feel about being part of that campaign? If there's anything that can bring more humanity to politics, I'm all for it, because frankly, I'm disgusted with our political system right now. and just the conversation that you had before we came on, and you were saying that women Republicans need to have more of a voice, and against what you were showing on Twitter, I would argue that humanity needs to have more of a voice with that, and just not put up with it. It's foolish. It's just I've never seen the need for it, and the goal as a politician in my mind is to take care of your constituents, and I don't see a lot of that in politics today, and it's saddening. So I'm more than happy to be a part of it and shining a light on Joe Biden's just humanity. And the stories are limitless. If you want to look for them, they're throughout the internet and wherever else you may find them. He's got humanity to spare. So, and Brayden is just a perfect example of it. I meant what I said. He's a different little boy now than he was. Well, he's not a little boy. He's a different 13-year-old boy than he was before he met Biden. He's much more confident and could care less if he stutters in front of others. So that wasn't always the case.
A confident, compassionate, handsome young man. Much to be proud of there. Owen, thank you so much for being with us today. Brayden, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience with us. We're grateful to have both of you here. And Brayden, good luck in school this year. I hope it's a good year for you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Lisa, there's Owen and Brayden Harrington. I just love that little kid. I got to tell you, I shouldn't call him a little kid. He's 13 years old, but I love him.
Yeah, what an incredibly impressive person he is. I was texting with my sons who are 20 and 22 last night, and telling them very excitedly that we had Brayden and Owen coming on today, and they both said, please,
what?
Okay, choking up there. Please tell them what an inspiration.
Yeah. Lisa, I hear you. I was tearing up a little bit listening to Brayden just now, giving advice to other young people who might face similar challenges. And I remember the first time I saw this back when it was a story, when at the time of the town hall and all, I cried watching just the news clip from it. And it's not because we shouldn't diminish that reaction to it. I think Owen's father really kind of said this really well at the end there. I think that people are just, we say we're so sick of how ugly it has become in politics. The truth is, I think that people are really burdened by it. It's hard. It's cumbersome. It's painful. It's not how the vast majority of us conduct ourselves out in the real world. It's not what we expect or accept from people in our lives. So to see something like Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think we're just starved for goodness. We just, those occasional stories come by, and Owen's absolutely right. If you go out and you seek them out, they're there.
Right.
But we have so little of it coming at us these days that the impact of it, when it is something like Brayden's story, is just incredibly moving. And I remember watching the Brayden's statement that he made during the convention, and wow, his dad is absolutely right. When you began that interview today, the first time Brayden spoke, I was sitting here with my mouth hanging open. The degree of confidence that he has developed, and the smoothness of his speech now, because he doesn't care anymore. He knows it's okay if sometimes he's going to stutter, and
that's what confidence is.
Right. It's okay to be different.
Right. I love it.
And
I love that the
we all have those.
Actually, right. But I just love that he actually followed up, and he followed. Someone's knocking on my door right now, Lisa. Someone just came up on my front porch and knocked on the door right there on the other side of my camera. I think it was the FedEx guy. So,
barking.
so that was just terrific. I'm just so happy that they could join us and that people could see and hear from Brayden directly. And I'm just so impressed that Joe Biden did follow up and he did call, when he said that all of it. This is just a beautiful story. And I'm just glad that we could bring it to everybody today on LPTV. So coming up next on Vote for America, we're going to be talking to Senior Advisor to the Lincoln Project, Kurt Bardella. But before we do that, here's some more for you from the Lincoln Project.
First, Donald Trump tells America he won't accept the results of the election unless he wins. Then, Trump tells his violent anti-Semitic Proud Boy allies to stand by. Stand by for violence. Stand by for attacks. Stand by to keep him in office at all costs. His words aren't a dog whistle. They're a siren.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully.
Trump's violent mobs make it clear. This election is a choice between ballots and bullets. Between America or Trump.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back to Vote for America on LPTV. It is my pleasure to welcome our next guest. He is a senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, and I'm sure you've seen him on a number of cable news shows as well. But we're happy to have him here with us today, Kurt Bardella. Good afternoon, Kurt. Great to have you. How are you?
To be back on with you.
I'm so happy to have you here. So, Kurt, I want to jump right in with you and talk about something that Lisa and I were talking about a little bit earlier today. In the wake of the vice presidential debate, you would think that we could be sitting here talking about the differences in policy between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris, or, the degree to which they were able to make the case for the top of the ticket that each of them are running on. But instead, we had to open the show today talking about another set of grossly inappropriate statements from Republican men. And, one of the things I said at the beginning was, I'm just so sick of it. And it's not enough for women and Republican women to speak up about this if we're going to put an end to it. The first one was from Harlan Hill, an advisor to the president or to the president's campaign, who made this ridiculously misogynistic statement. And then from a sitting member of Congress, Greg Murphy, who made a racist statement, both directed straight at Kamala Harris. What is going on in our party? Where is this coming from?
It astounds me, Jennifer, when I read stories about how Republican leaders in Congress are always fretting about how they don't have enough women in leadership. They don't have enough women in their conference. And when you look at the rhetoric that is used by these type of people, this is the reason why. And it always astounds me. It's not that some of these people have the audacity and the lack of judgment and the worldview to espouse these type of sexist, misogynistic, and at times racist views. It's that the deafening silence from the community at large in the Republican Party when these things are made and they don't hold them accountable.
Right.
These are the people who howl at the moon anytime a Democrat says or does something that doesn't align with their worldview, that they find incendiary. When a member of the so-called squad says something or tweets something that they perceive to be over the line, they can't wait to condemn that person. They can't wait to try to invoke cancel culture on them. But when people in their own tribe are doing it, they're nowhere to be seen. They tell everybody, well, it's a tweet. I haven't seen the tweet yet. I haven't read it yet. I have to see the full content. They have 1,000 excuses why they can't speak out and condemn something so obvious and blatant as sexism and racism and misogyny. And this is the overarching problem of why the Republican Party has this problem with women, why the gender gap continues to broaden, why I remember back in the earlier part of this decade, the quote-unquote war on women was such a big issue that was perpetrated by the Republican Party and Republican members of Congress. Well, that's continuing to play out, and this is why they lose elections.
Right. You're right. And, it also occurs to me you talked about, when members of the squad say something and how quick we are as Republicans to push back on that. It is, I hate to say this, like I hate that I have to be the one to admit this, but even when that happens, it's rare that what we're pushing back on are gross, misogynistic attacks or racial attacks or, religious attacks. They tend to be that, we're saying that sounds like a socialist issue, that, they're saying something that we think sounds off the left bank there, on the socialist end of the party. They don't, I can't remember the last time, like they don't even go there. It's just from us. And you made another really good point that I want to highlight for our listeners, because one of our goals here, Kurt, is to convince those folks out there of why it's so important that we have to replace Donald Trump with a decent leader. The Republican Party has consistently had fewer women representing them in the House and Senate forever. And 2 years ago, we lost a significant number of women. Our numbers are about as low as I can remember them being in an awfully long time. So if you wonder why women don't come to the party, ask Donald Trump, ask Greg Murphy. Yeah. So I appreciate that. Clearly, I'm ranting and getting a little off of my chest at the moment too, but I appreciate your answer to that. So let's also talk about, and this is equally serious, Governor Whitmer, a sitting female governor in the state of Michigan, was the intended victim of a kidnapping plot by some essentially, right-wing extremists who thought they were going to take her off somewhere and put her on private trial for some crimes that I don't even know how they defined. What is going on in the world? Kurt, help me out here.
This is what happens when the president of the United States, the leader of the Republican Party, tweets things like "liberate Michigan." He is inviting people to take matters into their own hands, to use extremist and terroristic type of actions to try to get an ends to a means that he routinely calls for. When we see things like potential violence against the free press, when we see things like bomb threats being called into CNN or a reporter being shot on live air, these are all things that are fostered in an environment that is created by the rhetoric of the President of the United States and by the refusal of Republicans to condemn it. By their silence, they are allowing this to happen. They are complicit in it. They are accomplices in it. And that's why it's so concerning, the rhetoric we're seeing around the election. The president refusing to say that he will have a peaceful transition of power, that he will accept the results of the election. He is, by de facto, not doing that, calling for people to take arms and contest this election. He's calling on people, his right-wing, extremist, diehard, hardcore base voters, to not accept a peaceful transition of power and to permanently injure our democracy. And it's really something that, we're 26 days to the election. And part of the narrative and part of the question and uncertainty surrounding it is what will happen when there is a result, and how will these candidates accept it? The fact that we're having to discuss and debate this, the fact that we have to entertain the notion that our leaders may not be safe because people are plotting against them from within our own country is about the most undemocratic thing I think we've ever seen.
Well, and that was part of my follow-up question for you. I know what we're hearing, and up until this thing with Governor Whitmer, I've been saying to people, I know there's concern about violence in the streets. I know there's worry about what will happen if the president won't leave, but that won't happen. We have a constitution in place. We have a process in place. We all need to stay calm and vote. And after what we've just learned that was being plotted against Governor Whitmer, I don't know if I can say that with as much confidence. And I know that you don't have like an inside track to the white nationalists who might be getting ready to take up arms. But just your opinion, like, are you genuinely concerned that there could be violence in the streets of America after the results of this election are learned?
I am, and I'll tell you, the moment that I really got concerned about that possibility was a few months ago. It was when the President of the United States authorized the use of force against peaceful protesters a block from the White House. When we saw the instruments of government being deployed as instruments of fear and intimidation against people exercising their constitutionally protected rights by this government, by this president, that told me, wow, there is no limit to what these people are willing to do to hold on to power. There's no limit to what they're willing to do to sow chaos and reap fear and delegitimize our process. And then when we see things like the plot in Michigan, you have to assume the worst. You have to assume that right now there are people and forces and groups that are trying to do the same thing after this election or on election day, or to any Democrat candidate. It's incredibly concerning. It's incredibly serious. And again, once you cross the threshold of the president using government and military force on his own citizens, there's not a lot left to the imagination.
Right. And I think that's exactly the issue with it, is that it's not just, these radicals who are in their basement, under a single spotlight making plans. It's that we've seen the president, what I would suggest is abuse the force that, he has access to. And we know that there are others in the government who have been appointed by this president who have a tendency to kind of be his, to be his strong man for him rather than a check on his worst instincts. So we're going to, obviously that's a topic that we're going to continue to talk about more going forward. But Kurt, let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about the vice presidential debate. It'll be the last time we talk about it on the show. It was on Tuesday. Today's Friday. Let's kind of put it to bed once and for all. I assume that you had a chance to watch the whole thing. And, just let's start just by kind of giving me your top lines. Do you feel like one or the other of them were stronger than the other? And if so, why?
I feel like, much like is the case with most of these, I guess we'll call them debates at this point, if you like your candidate coming into it, you still like them coming out of it. I think that if you are an undecided voter, if you are one of those disaffected Republicans and independent, and particularly if you are a woman, you came away, I think, more towards Kamala Harris, in part, Mike Pence's condescending tone, his demeanor, his penchant for talking over not just Senator Harris, but the moderator as well, Susan Page, is something that I think every woman can identify with on a real visceral, emotional level. They know what it's like to sit in a room with a particularly a white man who doesn't think they belong there, and who condescends to them and talks over them and tries to mansplain to them. I thought that Pence's tone, was not something that will help him with female voters. And again, the point of these debates, these widely watched, tens of millions of Americans watching this, is to try to get voters in your camp. And when you are the campaign that is behind, as the Trump-Pence campaign has been since the beginning of this election, when you are behind and you don't use this opportunity to expand your coalition, broaden out your support, try to win over new constituencies, that by nature is a de facto loss. If you didn't gain a single thing from that election, even if it's a tie, even if we all agree maybe it just broke even and had no impact, that is a net loss for the campaign that is behind. And that's why I think that for Biden and Harris, it was a good night.
And behind with women, like I can't get over the degree to which the Trump campaigns appear to be disconnected from the fact that they need women. Even if they don't respect women, even if they don't particularly like women, they are not going to win this election without them. And to your point, something you said early on there, the tone that Pence took that's all it takes to convey disrespect and dismissal is just the tone sometimes. So I agree with you about the debate. Let's talk a little bit. One of the issues covered in the debate was obviously the administration's handling of the COVID pandemic and the fact that the vice president himself was supposed to be leading the committee that was in charge of all of that. It looks like at this point, at the most recent count, 26 people directly connected with the White House have tested positive. That Rose Garden event for Judge Coney Barrett is it's a super spreader. It can't be called anything else. It's become a super spreader. I assume that over the next several days, we're going to learn more people. We'll learn more and more people who were infected, either from being there or being exposed to people who are there. We've been putting a lot of attention on the coronavirus here at the Lincoln Project because it's such a serious issue. What do you think? What did you think about Pence when he was asked a direct question about his role as the head of that committee, and he essentially gave a 2-minute uninterrupted answer about what an outstanding job Donald Trump has done on addressing the pandemic?
It just shows, I think, how delusional and out of touch they are with the realities of this pandemic. When you have the body count that we have, when you have more, 210,000 dead Americans, millions of people infected, there isn't a single person in this country who hasn't been touched by this virus in some way, who doesn't know somebody who has had it, who doesn't know someone who has lost someone because of it. And when you try to go on national television and convince the American people that that's no big deal, that in fact that should be celebrated, that they've done a great job and should be celebrated for only 210,000 dead Americans, that just completely doesn't jive with what most people feel about this. I mean, the thing that's so different about the corona versus almost anything that we've ever had in our political lexicon is this is something that truly affects people on a day-to-day level. When you go to the grocery store, you're thinking about it. When you're in an elevator, you're thinking about it. When someone near you breathes or sneezes or coughs, you think about it. And when the everyday behaviors and the everyday things that we generally take for granted are compromised, that's when Americans overall feel that something isn't right, that something is broken. And we're so far into this now, and the president's insane declarations that this will somehow just evaporate and go away magically. We know that that's not happened. And when you have your kids in your house because they can't go to school, or when you're at home because you can't go to work, you are reminded almost every minute of every day of the failures of Trump and Pence handling the coronavirus. So for Mike Pence to go on national TV in front of 40, 50 million people and say we're doing a great job, I think anybody at home who's watching that is just going, wow, you are either lying or you are just completely out of touch.
And I would say even people who have decided they're going to vote for Donald Trump and Mike Pence have to have heard that answer and thought, oh, you got to be kidding me, Mike. Come on. Come on, you've got to be kidding me. We feel it every single day. To your point, and your point about the grocery store, not to get really personal with everybody, but that's where it's the hardest for me for some reason. Going into the grocery store with my mask on, trying to follow the arrows up and down the aisles and bumping elbows with people and worrying about, am I putting somebody else at risk? It's just I found his answer just unbelievably disconnected. So really quickly, Kurt, one more question, and then we're going to go to some questions from our audience. How important is it that the American people know the truth about the health and well-being of the president?
I think it's essential. I think that at a time when, again, there's a virus ravaging this country, this president had the virus. People need to know what his health and what his situation in detail is, particularly when you have a president who has already said he wants to go back on the road. He wants to have more rallies. He wants to put himself in the same breathing proximity as his most ardent supporters. And I'll tell you, I would want to know what your health is if you're going to stand next to me and shout at me and yell at me and be in the same airspace as me. And particularly when you have a president who has told more than 20,000 lies. Who has lied about everything from his marriage to crowd sizes at inaugurations. We need to have transparency right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, again, as I said at the beginning, I think this is going to be one of the most important issues that people consider as they head to cast their ballots this year. So Kurt, our good friend Lisa Senecal's with us. I know you know Lisa, and she has been keeping an eye on everything that our viewers have been saying and asking out there in the Twitterverse and beyond. So Lisa, what do we have today?
Hey, Kurt, good to see you. We have a couple of questions. The first one comes from Mary, and she is wondering if the silent majority who voted for Trump in 2016 is still active and they're just not showing up in the polls. I think a lot of us have kind of, PTSD from 2016 when we just didn't expect some folks to show up in the results that weren't showing up in the polls. So, what do you think we're missing this time?
There are a couple of things, and again, I understand that feeling of 2016 and how the polls got it wrong. But let's remember that since 2016, we've had a lot of elections, and every single time the polls have been pretty spot on. The polls called the huge wave that we saw in the 2018 midterms. The polls were right about the changes in governorships that we saw in states like Louisiana and Kentucky. I actually think it's going to be the opposite this time. I think that there are people who aren't willing to tell a pollster that they're voting for Joe Biden, who voted for Trump in 2016. But are going to pull the lever for Joe Biden this time. I think that in Republican circles, particularly, it's such a stigma if you go outside the Trump tribe, and there's so much social pressure in those circles to stay part of that cult. But I still think that there are people who may not be willing to tell even their closest friends that they're voting for Joe Biden, who actually will. So I think the polls have it even smaller than what the reality is on the ground.
Yep, and I think we tend to forget, because of the Electoral College and Trump becoming president, that Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. So the polls weren't as off as they might seem to be. It's an argument for not paying attention to the national polls at all. They really don't mean anything. You got to, look at the state polling, especially in the swing states. We have another question that originally came in thinking that our friend Mike Madrid was going to be here, but we know that you are more than able to take the place in his stead. So the question comes from Dave in New Mexico, and he says, hi, Kurt. Most of the polls are looking fantastic, but I'm afraid that turnout isn't going to be there, hence negating the polls. What do you think about voter turnout? Which side's going to get the big turnout this year?
Well, as a poor substitute for Mike Madrid, let me say that we at the Lincoln Project have been aggressively following what we've seen from the mail-in absentee return so far. Obviously, we're going to have a record number of absentee votes this year. I think that what you'll see, frankly, is that for Democrats and people who believe in science, they're going to be more inclined to vote by mail. Not wanting to put themselves in position to be in a big crowd in line for hours upon hours. I think that Trump voters, Republican voters who believe, much to their own personal health detriment, the insane propaganda coming from Donald Trump about the coronavirus, I think that they'll be more likely to show up and vote in person. I still think that ultimately turnout's going to be very robust. I think that no matter where you sit on the ideological spectrum, you are motivated to vote. I think that everyone would agree, no matter who you're voting for, that this is the most important election of our lifetime. And I can't think I don't know anybody who's even equivocating whether they're going to vote. Part of the reason why the polls have actually been so stable and steady is because people already know who they're going to vote for. Their minds are made up, and they are enthusiastic to vote for their person. And so I think that we're going to have a very high turnout despite the challenges presented by coronavirus.
Kurt, that's terrific. And you know what? It always strikes me how few people are left undecided in advance of the election. And yet those few undecideds, there are so many times, so many cases where they completely tip the scale. So it's just fascinating to watch. Kurt, we're really happy that you could be with us today. Thank you so much. I hope you'll come back and join us again before this is all over.
Thanks for having me on. I love watching the show. The interview you guys did before I came on, just, it got me right here. What a remarkable story. That kid's one of my heroes.
What a terrific kid. Yeah, what a terrific kid. And
Amazing.
frankly, what a terrific guy, Joe Biden, for really understanding and reaching
Yeah.
out and offering that child some support and some self-confidence. So good to have you, Kurt. Have a great day.
You too. See you guys.
And always good, Lisa. Always good to be hearing from our audience, Lisa, from our viewers, and bringing us those questions.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we will have more of that, and we will be hearing more from all of you. But in the meantime, we have a few messages for you from the Lincoln Project.
A record of service, a bipartisan leader who puts good ideas ahead of party politics. America knows Joe Biden. He is the man for this moment. Joe Biden's life has been marked by triumphs that didn't change the goodness in him, and public office that never went to his head. Loss and tragedy forged in him a strength and character this country needs more than ever. Not every American will agree with Joe Biden on every issue, but they know he'll unify this nation again. He won't see just Democrats or Republicans. He'll see Americans.
Paid for by the Lincoln Project, which is responsible for the content of this advertising.
We can get this pandemic under control, but this cannot be a partisan moment. It must be an American moment. We have to come together as a nation. And there's never been a single solitary thing America's been unable to do. Think of this, not once. So let's get the heck up. Remember who in God's name we are. This is the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity.
Welcome back to LPTV and Vote for America. We're going to get to some more questions from all of you in just a minute. But first, every day we like to give you a thing that you can do. And today that thing is to find out where your polling places are. Because of COVID, some of the polling places are different this year. So please go to vote.org. And there you can find all sorts of information, but you can find out specifically for your location where your polling place is going to be. Make sure you're armed with that before you head out to vote. You don't want to take the extra time and end up in the wrong place. So check that out, please. And now we want to dive into a few of your questions. We had a lot of really good ones today. The first one is coming from Jess in Texas. And Jess asks, from the time of the election to inauguration, would Trump be able to still confirm as Supreme Court justice, even if he has lost the election? And when Trump loses, I love that they say when, not if he refuses to transition, what guarantees the American people's votes will be respected and he will go? I'll let you jump right on that one, Jennifer.
I was going to say, let's answer the second part of that first. He will lose and he will go. But that starts with, we will vote. We will vote. He will lose. He will go. As for the Supreme Court, yeah, he does. I mean, the Republicans will have the majority and the president will have the presidency until January 20th. That's, good, bad, or indifferent. That's the Constitution. That's the way that it works. The important part of to me, the more important part of that question is the second half. There are all sorts of mechanisms in place to make sure that he leaves. And I know there's a lot of concern about that. So, will there be violence? What will happen? He cannot just refuse to leave. And this, kind of my thing that I always think about whenever anyone brings this up, we have to remember that in his heart, Donald Trump is a coward. if it comes to the point where there are people threatening to drag him out of the White House, he will pack his bag, skulk out the back door, get on the helicopter, and leave. He does not have the strength or the character to stand up to any such sort of circumstance. I'm not worried about him leaving. I'm really not. He will leave.
Yeah, no, I don't have concerns about that either. We have a constitution. It provides for swearing in the elected president-elect. That'll happen. And at that moment, the power that he had is gone. Even if he still wants to sit in the chair, there's just nothing left. So let's hop on to our next audience question. And this one comes from Tommy, who's a 62-year-old Navy vet. And Tommy asks, what are the pros and cons of voting by mail and voting in person? Also, what are poll watchers for? We've heard way too much about poll watchers coming from Donald Trump this year. And poll watchers are not supposed to be there to intimidate voters. That is not their role. They are there to ensure a free, fair, and democratic election. And, these folks that he says, come on out and be unofficial poll watchers, they're not legally allowed to hang out inside polling places. So if people are concerned that they're going to have, a dozen scowling,
they won't be allowed in.
Armed men, they're not going to be there.
Right. They won't be allowed in. And anyone who shows up who doesn't belong there and causes a problem, the actual poll watchers will call the local officials and they'll be removed immediately. So absolutely. As for pros and cons of voting by absentee ballot or or in person, if you vote in person, your vote is counted immediately. If you vote by absentee ballot, it takes more time for your vote to get counted. On the other hand, in the world that we're living in right now, especially for folks who might be elderly or have other sort of underlying conditions, voting in person certainly poses a greater risk that you could be exposed to a contagious disease, whereas voting by mail does not. So the most important thing is if you're going to vote by mail, do it now. Do it the first day that you're legally allowed to do so. Get it done.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go ahead to our third tweet. And this one comes from Tracy in California. And Tracy asks, can you please speak to the idea of polls and voter complacency? Joe Biden is showing considerable lead, but I fear some voters with lines and other issues, they may decide not to show up at the polls. So can you talk about the importance of every single vote?
Of course. I mean, the foundation of our democracy is everybody voting, is all of us embracing, what our role, what we the people, the role that we have in this whole process. And it starts with voting. You have to vote. And don't think that these polls that showed Joe Biden so far ahead means that your vote doesn't count. Of course it does. Those polls are a reflection of the assumption that you're going to go cast your vote, that you're going to cast a ballot, that the people that are being polled are actually going to show up and vote on election day or before. So I cannot emphasize strongly enough how very important it is that every single one of us gets our vote counted this year. More important probably than ever. And politicians say this all the time. And I remember saying it when I ran for office. I remember saying it when I was chairman of the party. This is the most important election of our lifetimes. You must get out and vote. I can't believe that I'm saying it now again, but the truth is, my God, this is the most important election of our lifetimes. And please do not take anything for granted. Cast your ballot.
Yeah, one of the things in 2016 that was so incredibly disheartening for me was that people found time and energy to pour into the streets the day after the election to express their upset with Donald Trump winning the election. And when so many of those people were asked by reporters if they had voted, they said no. And if all the people who were upset had taken that opportunity to participate in our democracy and cast their ballot, things could have been different. And you don't want to be one of those people the day after the election feeling like, I could have done something. So absolutely get out there and do it. I'm going to confuse our folks behind the scenes, and I want to go ahead and skip over tweet number 4. and go right to tweet 5, if we could do that, please. Sorry. And the question is, what protections are in place for polling station staffers and voters now that Trump and his son have put a call out to their supporters to make sure the election is not stolen from him? And this gets back to the voter intimidation stuff.
Right, absolutely. And first, be clear that they're saying that to intimidate you right out of the gate. Like there's not just about them trying to turn people out on election day. They're trying to stop you from showing up on election day when they put that kind of stuff. So one, don't play into their hands. Don't give them that victory. If you're a voting person, if you're going to be voting in person, show up, get online, get your ballot cast. Secondly, I just said this on a previous question, there are protections in place at every polling place in America to keep people safe and to assure that voter intimidation is not allowed. And if you are online to vote and you feel in any way that your safety is at risk, or that there is an individual or an effort somewhere nearby trying to intimidate you and stop you from voting, get on your cell phone and call your local police department and tell them where you are and have them come. It is the responsibility of law enforcement to make sure that every American who is safe in their community, essentially. But if you feel that there is any sort of a danger to you, you have a right as a citizen to make that call to 911 and say, I'm at the corner of such and such street in front of so-and-so school trying to cast my ballot, and there's somebody here threatening me, please come. So, but let me also say, I don't anticipate that there are going to be as many problems with that as some people do, because again, I really do think that there are a lot of bullies out there who are all talk and ultimately no action.
Right. I agree. I think this is more a voter intimidation tactic in terms of you ever going to the polls, not necessarily
they're trying to keep you from showing up. Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. So those are great questions. I encourage everybody out there, keep them coming. You can tweet us at hashtag AskVoteForAmerica and comment wherever it is on social media you're watching us. We will definitely keep including those questions in our show every day. So keep them coming. We want your voices.
Thank you, Lisa. I love when people send us questions. This is becoming my favorite part of the show, because it does make me feel like we're really helping people get the information that they need. And I want to say thank you to our guests, of course, Kurt Bardella. Always great to have him with us from the Lincoln Project, and to Owen Harrington and his son, Brayden Harrington. So grateful that they were willing to come here and share their personal story with us as well. And as always, Lisa, it is a pleasure to have you with us, and I so appreciate what you bring to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It is always a blast to be here. I love having an opportunity to talk about all this important stuff with you. I also want to throw out a couple reminders to our viewers. We are 25 days from the election at this point, which kind of blows my mind. I can't believe that we're finally getting there. We have 5 million votes cast. Yours needs to be one of those. So please, if you're voting absentee, get out there as soon as possible. And again, I just want to encourage you to continue connecting with us so we make sure that we are addressing your needs on this show and we are answering the questions that you have in these 3.5 weeks until November 3rd. I also wanted to go ahead and remind viewers about the deadlines that are coming up for registering to vote, because we have a bunch of those, that some today and are just around the corner. So today, Idaho, New York, North Carolina, and Oklahoma. This is the last day for registering there. Tomorrow is the deadline for Delaware. And on the 13th, we have DC, Kansas, Maryland, don't make me guess, great, Minnesota, New Jersey, Oregon, Virginia, and West Virginia. And then on the 14th is Wisconsin, and on the 16th is Nebraska. So please make sure you're keeping track of your deadline in your state for when you have to register to vote. And one last time, a thing you can do today is to go to vote.org, find out where your polling place is. There's also a spot on that website if you want to volunteer to be a poll worker. You can click on that link and you can find out for your voting location if they need poll workers, and they're really in short supply this year because of COVID, and they tend to be older folks. So if you are young and healthy and you can take this extra step, then please go ahead and do that.
That's perfect.
And
Thank
that's
you so
all
much,
I
Lisa.
have for today.
And that's it. Yes. Thank you so much, Lisa. That's terrific. You've got to register. If you're not registered, you can't vote, and we need you to vote. So thanks, Lisa. Have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. And of course, a special thank you to everybody who is tuning in on a regular basis, coming here to be part of the show. It really is about you. It's about making sure that we answer your questions and that you feel empowered to go out and make your voice heard on election day as well. And in kind of a special way today, I just want to talk to my friends in the Republican Party, all of my women friends out there. I'm still a registered Republican, and I understand. I think that I understand why you stay with the party, what the principles are, what the values are that are core to the founding of the Republican Party that continue to inspire you. But I am telling you, that as long as we continue to stand as Republican women and accept the abuses from this president, they will not be washed away from our party. Our party will not be washed clean of misogyny and sexism and racism as long as we continue to stand and vote for these people that we know are not just at the heart of the problem, but we know that they're damaging our country. It can't be about whether or not we care that they're damaging the Republican Party. It can't be about loyalty and not wanting to, speak out against another Republican and Reagan's 11th commandment. And it is so much bigger and more important than that this year. So I asked you to join me. This is our moment. Let's vote for decency. Let's vote for equality. Let's vote for real compassionate strength and leadership in the White House. I hope that as we continue to have these conversations, I will be able to persuade you to join me in voting for Joe Biden this year. You don't have to leave the party if you don't want to. You don't have to vote Democrat the rest of your life. Just in this moment, when we know as women, as leaders, as mothers, as business owners, we know when we look at this president that this is wrong. This is wrong. It's hurting our children and it's hurting our country. And I hope that you will join me in voting for Joe Biden this year. Thank you for being with us today. We will be back next week. I look forward to seeing you then.
This is America, and it's hurting. Right now, we're getting knocked down by the very people who should be lifting us up. Our families and our neighbors are sick, and we're being lied to. They want to scare us into believing it has to be this way. It doesn't. In the past, when change was needed, we've stepped up. Now, it's time to step up again. This moment is not about Democrat or Republican. It's about being on the right side of history. We must set aside our differences, stand together, united, and ask, what can I do to help? It's time to put people ahead of politics, to put country over party. It's time to vote for America.
Vote. The question, and one of the determining factors, I think, as Rick pointed out, is going to be who's going to get or who's going to hold on to each other's base long enough to get this thing over the end zone.
Yeah.
And there are more seniors. There are more white seniors than there are Latino Hispanic voters, which is, benefits Biden.
Right.
You have what's in all likelihood going to be another COVID spike because of the policies that they're implementing to save the economy. That benefits Biden.
Right.
And we also, I believe, have a good opportunity to not bring the Hispanic vote completely back and correct for it, but perhaps enough.
Right.
So if I'm looking at this environment in the next 30 days and saying who's got a better chance of bringing the base back, does Biden have a better chance of bringing Hispanics back into the historical range, or does Trump have the opportunity to bring back senior citizens who in the middle of a COVID pandemic in the historic range, my money's on Biden. I think that poll is probably very, very accurate.
My name is Harry. Has anybody ever noticed that Donald Trump is only doing entertainment? He's not telling any truths. He's like a Dave Chappelle or any other comedian that you listen to. And that's why those people love him. They're not worrying about what he's saying. They love the entertainer that he is. And that's my opinion. Thank you.